Well, as I mentioned, today is National Concussion Awareness Day, the third Friday in September. Today, September 16th, 2022. This is National Concussion Awareness Day. And joining us from South Carolina, originally from Concord, she's going to school down there, Brooke Mills, who came up with the idea and the founder of National Concussion Awareness Day, which is the third Friday of September annually. And Brooke, good morning to you and welcome to the program. Good to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's just a pleasure and an honor.
Well, you were on the show many, many years ago, and you were telling us about when you suffered a concussion. Now, I want to ask you about this because you ended up having long-lasting effects from a concussion. Tell me what happened to you and why people should be aware if they fall or hit their head and why they should take this seriously and not kind of poo-poo it and not see a doctor or go to an emergency room.
Absolutely. Well, that's really a huge reason why I founded National Concussion Awareness Day, was to make sure that we're making a big deal about concussions and taking them more seriously than we have been. In 2014, I was in my freshman year of gym class. I went to Concord High School, and I went to go pick up a ball, and a boy went to go kick that same ball and ended up kicking the left side of my face, knocking me unconscious. And I was a competitive dancer leading up to that. I had never participated in any sports before, played any sports. And so I wasn't around an atmosphere that really taught me about concussions. And so right after my brain injury, I was suffering from mood swings, light sensitivity to noise, memory problems, sleeping problems, personality changes, and I just wasn't able to do all of the things that I was before my brain injury.
Yeah.
And so it completely, flipped my world upside down, and I didn't appreciate how going through my schooling and my curriculum, my teachers just didn't really understand concussions. And it felt like I was the first person in the world to get a concussion, when I know that's not that's not accurate. And so I wanted to just make sure that I could pave the path for other brain injury survivors and other concussion survivors to be able to get back into their normal daily living easier, to be able to spread education and just really educate more people and start conversations about concussions.
Oh yeah, and I think the awareness program is so important because people kind of, they'll fall on the ice, for instance, and fall on their head, and they feel okay, and they think they don't have a concussion, but they could have interior bleeding in their brain. They have no idea. They should really get it checked out. Any type of a fall when you fall flat on your head. Now you had this happen to you at age 14, and for how many years did you have these post-concussion syndromes? How many years after that, and how are you doing today?
So I found most of my symptoms were resolved at year 5. So that's still a really, really long time. Now I'm about 8.5 years out, and I still have memory problems. I have headaches that I never had before my brain injury, and short-term and long-term memory continue to be a problem for me. So I continue to see healing, but I saw the most of my symptoms subside and start to go away, and felt like I was able to return a little bit more towards myself prior to my brain injury at about 5 years, which is really crazy. And you had mentioned that, a lot of slips and falls happen in the state of New Hampshire. We have ice. The winter is coming, unfortunately. And so it's really important to know that signs and symptoms of a concussion can take quite a few hours. It can take up to 24 to 48 hours for symptoms to come on. And so it's really important that we're staying in tune with our body, checking in with ourselves and as to what feels different, and getting yourself checked out. Although there's no imaging for concussions, there's also MRIs and CT scans that can rule out other brain trauma, which are really valuable in this diagnosis and making sure that you're ready to go back to work or whatever you are up to.
Now, the interesting thing, Brooke, I fell a few years back on the ice. I fell flat on my head. I was walking my dog. I did not have the right shoes or snowshoes on in my driveway. It was ice. I fell flat back on my head, and I did get to check it out, and I was diagnosed with a concussive headache. I guess that's what they called it. And I don't know if there's any, I won't say cure, but as far as treatment goes, and people may not understand this, but you obviously do, what they told me to do was stay off of screens you need to give your brain a rest. That's the only way your brain could heal. So, I mean, put yourself in a dark room, stay off your phone, stay off of your computers, stay off televisions and any type of screens like that. And I was surprised by that. But I learned something new because that was the only way for my brain to kind of calm down and kind of deflate and be kind of inactive, you know, because in the business that I'm in here on the radio station, I'm an information junkie. I'm constantly, you know, looking up things, getting text messages and getting news alerts and things like that on all sorts of devices. But I really could not do my job right without harming myself even more if I thought that I would go against the doctor's wishes and say, listen, Mike, you gotta just stay off screens for 4 or 5 days. Is that the only thing people can do as far as treatment goes? Is there really any treatment when someone gets a concussive headache or diagnosed with a concussion?
Acutely, you're still going to hear a lot about, you know, putting yourself in that quiet room and avoiding screens. My number one recommendation is always to avoid those screen times. I found that audio and like music didn't really bother me in my brain injury, and so I found some healing in audiobooks and music and what have you. So you have to really play with what you're capable of doing, but definitely resting for those first two days in darker rooms, making sure you're getting enough sleep. I actually just recently sat with an MD who turned into kind of a health food junkie and making sure that we're protecting our brain through the food that we're eating. And so chatting with her, she made sure to mention that we're eating really high foods and antioxidants to help our brain recover, that we're getting enough protein and meat sources for all of those vitamins and minerals that you can't find in other sources, making sure that we're drinking enough water. And then recently, a lot of research is coming out saying that we need to start doing light aerobic activity to help stimulate the brain and release those happy hormones and get our body moving and adapting so that we're able to return to work or school faster than if we were to sit in a room for however many days or weeks. For me, I didn't go to school for nearly 2 months, and most of that time was resting.
Wow.
And so I found when it was time to go back into the real world, I wasn't able to walk more than a quarter of a mile without getting a debilitating headache and having to sit down and take a break. And so it really makes me question what my recovery time would have looked like if I had the more recent research that is supportive of saying going on light walks 2 days after a brain injury could be more beneficial than you laying in bed.
You know, the interesting thing, Brooke, too, is that I would imagine people that fall or hit their head or have an injury, they think it's not a big deal. They think it's not of a concern, and so they don't get checked out. So your advice is really if you fall and hit your head, even if you don't have a headache or you don't have sharp pains or you don't have blurry eyes or slurred speech, I mean, those things can happen within 48 hours. You probably should take yourself to an emergency care situation and tell the emergency doctors there, the medical personnel, as to what happened so they can at least look into the possibility of whether you have a concussion or not, because there are obviously, as you know, millions and millions of traumatic brain injuries occurring each year, and they are concussions, and some people don't even know they have one.
Absolutely. There's over 3.8 million concussions that happen each year that are just sports-related alone. And I think in New Hampshire, we have the ability to suffer from a lot more concussions, and unfortunately, car accidents happen. Even whiplash can cause concussions. It's really a really fun analogy that I use in my school education programs is a mason jar with a little bit of water and an apple inside. And that apple inside represents our brain. And if we hit that or shake that jar hard enough, that apple is going to hit the sides of the jar on the inside. And that's your brain hitting your skull. And so when a concussion occurs, we have these axons within our brain that become stretched. And over time, if we continue to have these axons stretched, a tau protein is going to build up. And that's what we're seeing our NFL players suffering from, which is called chronic traumatic encephalopathy.
Yeah.
And that deterioration that literally happens in your brain affects different areas. And so whether that's your personality areas, whether that's what's able to control your mood and your anger, whether that's your memory, all of these NFL players and people who have had repetitive concussions are unfortunately suffering from, even really early on in life. So it's so important to make sure that you were getting your first concussion diagnosed, so that that's on paper and we understand if you've ever suffered one before.
Yeah.
Because the more concussions that you have, the more susceptible you are to prolonged symptoms.
Yeah.
People who have had concussions are 2 times more likely to suffer from depression.
Yeah.
And so it can be a root cause of a lot of things that we wouldn't connect to it. So
we've seen
it's absolutely vital.
I was going to say, we've seen some of those NFL players commit suicide, unfortunately. Very sad. Brooke Mills joining us this morning. She's a brain injury survivor and founder of National Concussion Awareness Day, which is today. I just want to say that Brooke is going to be graduating from Sherman College of Chiropractic next year. Congratulations. You're also going to be competing for Miss New Hampshire in April at Pinkerton Academy, so good luck with that. You have partnered with the Brain Injury Association of America for social media change. We wish you the best, and thank you for creating this awareness. This is very, very important. Thank you, Brooke. Good to talk to you again.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, 7:56. This is the Pulse of New Hampshire.
107.7 WTPL, the Pulse of New Hampshire.